Hello, and welcome to Shades of Pleasure, a podcast celebrating pleasure, sexuality, and the vibrant, inclusive spectrum of love, gender, and relationships. I'm your host, Mo, and with me are my co-hosts, Melissa, Wayne, and Kelly. And together we hope to dismantle tropes that no longer suit us and change the narrative towards more authentic living. Hello, and welcome back to Shades of
Hi,
Pleasure.
everybody.
What
Hello.
are we talking about today, everyone?
Everybody's favorite. Jealousy.
Yeah, well, does that coincide with what Melissa ended last session with? I mean, the last recording with?
Well, the conversation that we had was after the podcast
Oh, okay.
had ended, and Melissa said something, and I can't remember what it was, but it was around fear, and because we were talking about really underneath all of the jealousy and the insecurities, it's fear.
Yeah.
Right. And we use the term radical fear. I don't remember if we used that on the call or if we said that
Yeah.
afterwards. But we were talking about the concept of radical fear. And basically, what that means is like everything is about everything that comes up is around fear.
Yeah, that's sort of the deeper meaning of all the different things we talk about.
Yeah.
Right. I think we were connecting it to attachment, and I think we were saying like, maybe a simplified way of looking at this attachment is like different ways that the attachment styles are kind of different ways that you cope with fear. Like under it all is fear, is what Mo was talking about. And if we can kind of maybe use that opportunity to face our fears, I think that's when you brought up radical, what did you say? Radical fear.
I just called it radical fear, like
Yeah.
leaning into the idea that fear is at the root of all of this.
Mhm.
You know, fear is at the root of the monogamy hangover. Fear is at the root of our jealousy. Fear is at the root of a lot of the conflicts that we have.
Yeah. Fear is at the root of us not getting asking for what we want.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
really like that because I feel like I know I do. I use radical honesty and vulnerability quite a bit, but I don't really talk about the radical fear. I like that terminology.
Well, actually, ironically, I think that's kind of what you end up getting to is the radical honesty and
Yeah.
vulnerability when you go through this radical fear.
Yeah.
Because like fear is just the reaction. It's just the experience we're having. It's, at the surface, but when we really face it and face it compassionately, right, without judging or criticizing ourselves or poo-pooing or, shitting on ourselves, it's like, oh, we get to these kind of more tender, more vulnerable
Yeah.
experiences, feelings, that yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
I really like this. I think what you're saying is if we can push through radical fear, then radical honesty and vulnerability is actually possible. Because usually when I talk about it, it's radical honesty and vulnerability, and I say, and there's got to be emotional safety there to be able to get there.
right.
And I think in both of these, I mean, that's all encompassed with radical fear, right? If you can push
Mhm.
through the radical fear and deal with that, then you get the emotional safety, you get to the honesty, you get to the vulnerability. Yeah, I like that little.
Yeah. Yeah, in doing so, I think we also mentioned like you get to, go at your pace that feels good and right for you. Like you don't have to, you know, I sometimes tend to go one of the extremes of like, let me just face it all and just jump into it, or like we don't have to pendulum between the extremes of like completely avoiding it, or like just heading on full deep dive into it, jump off the cliff. Like we get to kind of take our time to pace through it, um, as long as like we're doing that, we're kind of facing it and using, and I think using it, I just so love this compassion. I'm like such a fan of compassion especially self-compassion. And if we do it compassionately, I think that that will kind of help guide and pace it. And like, yeah, that it doesn't have to be this like, oh my God, I have to do the thing, or, it's more like just taking a peek at it, taking a look at it. You don't have to like now make it your whole entire identity in life. So,
Yeah, I think the thing that we were talking about was how fear shows up, obviously, in non monogamy, and how it can be the thing that drives people to, at the very sort of like most extreme, close the relationship, right? I think was
Mhm.
kind of what we were talking about. A couple that we know that kind of did that, right? They opened it up and then things got really hard. And we've, I've known multiple couples to do that, in personal life and in my practice as a therapist also. And so I feel like I feel like a broken record when we talk about jealousy a little bit, because we talk about it so much with our clients about it being normal and how we need to be able to express it. And so that's where I'm like leaning into the fear, like, is this a better way to explain it to clients? To talk about it from a place of fear, will they understand that better? Because I'm seeing this so much, like, I can't handle the jealousy. I can't handle the jealousy. Right. And I don't, that kind of, um, I don't know. Is it making sense what I'm
No, I
saying?
mean,
It,
listen, I feel like I actually feel like as a therapist, I just had a breakthrough of like, oh my God, how have I been leaving radical fear out? Because it really it reminded me of one of those just like cycles that you see. It's like the jealousy or and it takes you through, and fear is really at the root of all of it. And yes, you have to look at all the pieces, but if you really look at it through the base is radical fear, then all those other pieces are just under that umbrella. So it
it,
makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's hard to try to. I know for me, I try to explain it sometimes from a scarcity mindset because I think that when I say fear to my clients, they may view that as a weakness, and they be like, "Oh no, it's not fear. No, I'm not afraid of anything." Like it's fear. Like your fear of a fear of losing something, the fear of something changing or shifting, the fear of not being accepted, of judged, whatever it is, it's all stemming from fear.
Yeah, or even just the fear of this is that precious little piece in me, and I'm actually opening up to show it to you. Can you take care of it with me? Right? Like that fear of, am I, is it because we're all protecting ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, the fear is, at least what I see, like exactly what Wayne said, people trying to say, no, I'm not scared.
Yeah.
I'm not scared. How can we talk about jealousy if we can't talk about fear?
Mhm. I think one maybe path into that is I think one curious question for clients like that who might be like, "Oh, I'm not scared. I'm not afraid of anything or whatnot." I have a theory. I wonder if it's because their fear isn't so much about losing their partner or, or like jealousy about like another, like comparing themselves to another person, like I want to be that person, but more so their fear is about possibly losing themselves, and so that doesn't always, I think, track as fear. Or, because we're kind of fear, I think we emphasize it as like losing our partner or losing the relationship or, whatnot. But I think there's another experience of fear and loss that is really about ourselves. And that doesn't always feel, I think as vulnerable, acceptable, or something. It's like there's a whole nother different experience there. So, I mean, ultimately, that's what attachment I think is. It's either like this fear of losing your partner or fear of losing yourself. The avoidance one is like usually fearful of losing parts of themselves. their autonomy, their, choice, decision, whatever, and the others is like losing your partner.
Yeah, because we're all the main character in our movie, right? And it's hard. That's why they say hindsight is 2020. It's really easy once you've had time and distance and you can get perspective on it. And so to be able to do that in real time is is valuable.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know, I can't remember if we talked about this in the last season. I'm sure we did, but I can't really remember. But um I'm so like opposed, and it's so that's just a strong word, but it really really pains me when um couples close their relationship up after they've opened it up because of this feeling, these feelings of fear, especially when there's new people involved, right? Or other partners involved. And so I can't remember if I talked about it, so I'm just going to say it again. If I didn't, great. Um, it's exercising a form of couple privilege, right? Like we're the couple, we have the power, so we get to close up and we get to decide when and what's good for our relationship. That trumps any of the other relationships outside, right? So the veto power that a couple can hold, um, when they're not talking about or not addressing or not leaning into their, you know, their relationship to fear.
Do you feel that way even if people have yet to be involved in their relationship? Like if they're kind of just at the stage of,
Swinging.
or swinging, yeah, or yeah, that's a good one,
Yeah,
swinging,
like if they
or
don't have other.
they just haven't got yet to the stage of like including other people. They're still kind of exploring it within themselves. Do you still feel that?
I mean, I feel that for my clients, I'm very cautious, like, like opening because I don't like, like I said, it's harsh to say that I don't like it.
Hmm.
I think that it's reckless is a better way of saying it. I think that it's reckless because it ignores privilege, right? And I'm very sensitive to people exercising privilege, um, because it can cause so much harm, right? In
Mhm.
our culture, just on a big level, not even interpersonally or personally, like on a big level, like I'm always concerned with the macro and how things are affecting our society on a big level. And so when we see that, yes, even if a couple who's swinging and a lot of emotions are coming up and they decide to close, even if no one's personally getting hurt, it it's kind of like what Wayne was saying last week about ethical non-monogamy, right? It's like putting that word in front of it reminds us that society is poo-pooing the concept, right? Society is centering monogamy. So when people close up because of fear, it perpetuates that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of another thing Wayne said of like once you once you've done it, or once, what did he say? Like once you're there, And so
Wayne says, like, once you start talking about it, you're already
you're
there.
already there. So to close it up almost,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like what really is your motivation for closing it up, because it doesn't change it already being there, this the presence of it.
Yeah.
And maybe it could buy people more time, or or it could possibly be somewhat preventative of
I think
buying more time before people do actually get involved where they're hurt, so that they kind of really, I don't know, try to figure it out before including other people. But also, what you just said makes me think like, even if people aren't involved, it does kind of set the tone of this, like, speaking to privilege of the relationship, right? Like privilege of the dynamic or the relationship over the people that are in it, or over the connection, the actual connection between the people.
I think in 9 times out of 10, that's a made up statistic.
It sounded great, Joe.
I just wanted to sound really smart. A majority of the time, my clients will come back and be like, I've had a taste of non-monogamy. I don't think I can go back. And yet their partner is potentially so dysregulated that they have like we have to. So I think what's coming up for me is, as clinicians and humans, like how do we support that dysregulation so that people understand that this dysregulation is the growth, right? This is the journey. And maybe if we're helping clients open up for the first time, we let them know how dysregulating it can be.
Yeah, sort of front load it. And I feel like this is one of those times when I want to step in and say, I don't think it is for everybody. It isn't for everybody. This isn't about, oh, it's got to be that way for you. Like, how do we help clients get to the place where they realize, am I acting on my own values where I feel safe with, or is this really something that I don't want to do, right? Like, to be able to help them on either side of it.
Yeah.
That wasn't a popular opinion, apparently.
No, yeah, no, I agree with you.
I just don't want to be the one talking all the time.
Yeah, same.
Wayne, speak up.
No, I'm here. I'm listening. Because my thoughts are going other places. My thoughts are going like, I just like I'm like you, Mo. I look at the macro of the cause and effect of how we operate within relationships, and I think that it is doable to stay in a relationship and close a relationship down. What is the cost of that? What does that come with? So yeah, my parents been together for 40 years, and yeah, okay, and how miserable were they? All the other things that come with that, like were they happy? Look how they speak to one another. Look at the things that affected you. And so I think about these things like that, and so yes, we can do it. It can be done. But I think that a lot of us have now it's like you said, it's just about the safety of it, right? Like I'm going to play it safe because at least this way I don't have to deal with my discomfort. I'll just deal with you just being angry at me and we just being frustrated with one another for the next 20 years. But that's okay though. At least we're still together.
At least we're safe.
Yeah.
At least I'm no longer dysregulated.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in an attempt to bridge between Mo and what Mo and Wayne were saying and what Kelly was saying, you know, actually, Kelly, we Wayne and I, it's kind of one of our slogans for the podcast that we were doing together. We titled it "Non-Monogamy is for Everybody." Um, however, it's not literal in that we think everybody should be non-monogamous. That was a little bit of a marketing, like, hey, people are gonna be like, wait, what? But that's to bring them in. But really, the message is that even if you decide and choose and feel that a non-monogamous relationship dynamic is not for you, the framework, I guess, of non-monogamy or kind of what do you call it? I don't know. I'll just, for lack of a better word, the framework of non-monogamy is for everybody. And we can use that, to, I think, help guide us on what is right for us, relationship wise, because I think it does ask really good questions and
Yeah.
it challenges the norm, right? It challenges what the kind of default of relationships is, and there's a lot of space and permission to question that for yourself and to find answers for yourself in it. So,
Yeah.
And
Sorry. I was just gonna say really quick, and I literally use that model for all my clients, monogamous, non-monogamous. I've used the non-monogamous framework when working with my monogamous clients, just to have them open up and ask questions
yeah,
and become curious, because I think that those things, anyways, yeah, I think that they're overlooked sometimes when we're talking or looking or are within monogamous relationships.
yeah. And I want to be real clear. I know that this podcast isn't to support the people who do want to be monogamous. I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, I want this to be palatable for everybody. And if someone if let's say a couple is listening to this, that one of them wants to go monogamous, one of them wants to, or go non-monogamous, one of them wants to stay monogamous. I don't want it to feel like this is so pro that
Hmm.
they won't get anything of it or feel like
Exactly.
the questions we're asking are valuable. Or so I think I just every once in a while feel like I need to sort of throw that in if it feels like, oh, we want everybody to do this and be this way and you're messed up if you're not. So
Yeah.
that is just sort of my little take on that. And I don't even care if this part gets in the podcast or not. I just
This part is going to get
It's definitely, yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah.
but you know,
Because
I feel like it could be really easy to get turned because that is how I imagine this podcast being used. Like a couple, like, hey, are we doing this or are we not? What's it been like for you? And so I want that to be in there that like,
right.
okay, some people aren't going to go this way, but you're right, Wayne. These are great questions for people to ask about themselves, about their relationship, about their partner. It's fantastic. And so I do think this is valuable for everybody to listen to. So that's just sort of my little,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing that me and Melissa always talk about. When we were talking, we had other podcasts we were doing. We just like, like I believe that, the way people are in non-monogamous relationships, it just kind of forces you to hold that mirror is in your face. It's forcing you to face all the things that you don't want to face or would not normally have to face while in a monogamous relationship. So it's just basically bringing those things to light, just having those conversations, those very uncomfortable conversations around like desires, autonomy, wants, needs, just like, and how can we get them? And, I even talk to my couples about outsourcing. Like we outsource in monogamous relationships all the time. Why can't we look at it, just reframing it in that way? Like, we have intimate relationships with our friends. We don't look at it like that, but we do. Like guys as well. Like we go to the bar with our male friends. We go to games. We go whatever. We go drink without. Those are the intimate moments that we're spending that maybe and I hear a lot of people, well, my partner is my best friend, and my wife is my best friend, and my husband's my best friend. And why aren't we doing all those things without person in it? Like we would with our best friend because we're outsourcing certain elements that our partner is not into or doesn't like. And I think that we miss that sometimes. It's not a bad thing to outsource certain aspects of our relationship, outside. It's where we come home and we get the other 70-80% of the things that we need within the person that we're with.
yeah. I kind of think in pictures sometimes. What I just pictured, I was like, okay, as far as a relationship is concerned, you can either buy this prefab house because you like it and it's all great and wonderful, or you can go in and make it completely detailed to you and what you want, right? And so I guess I'm thinking of monogamy as like prefab, like this is what you're gonna get. These are your only options,
I
or
love that.
we can like build our own house
Yeah.
Right.
and we get to ask the questions and we get to do the scary stuff of like maybe we've never seen anybody else do this, but
Yeah.
it sounds good to us, so let's do it because that's what we like. I guess I'm kind of thinking of it in those terms.
Yeah, exactly. Or it can be a mix of both, It could be parts of it were prefab and other parts you get to, customize and choose, whatever the case. But I agree with you. I'm with you, Kelly. I think you and I tend to kind of, yeah, share that experience of wanting to balance things out and whatnot and like be inclusive of all the parts and whatnot, and so side note, I just want to like self-indulge for us and celebrate and hype us up because I love the group that we are and, all of us that we bring all of our experiences and all our perspectives and all our personalities to this podcast, all four of us. And I think that's why, people love to listen because there's a little bit of everything for everybody here. So, but I agree with you. I think that I also believe that in practice, non-monogamy is not for everybody, but I do think that the sorry in as a dynamic I think it's not for everybody but the practice of it or taking from it is for everybody because
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah
the all of the tools
Yeah.
around
choosing
communication and consent and understanding.
yes
But
exactly
you won't really get an opportunity to use all of the tools all the time in monogamy, not the way that you do
Yeah.
in non-monogamy.
And to kind of piggyback on what Melissa's saying, the reason that we can all come here and say our different our talk about our differences or the different ways is because we created such emotional safety within this group, right? And that's kind of what we're
We
talking.
built our own house.
We
Yeah.
built, we built our own house, so you have to feel safe to be able to say those things. Like I laughed because it was deafening silence after I said that. I was like, okay, well clearly that's not popular, right? And it's okay. I didn't feel threatened by that. It wasn't bad. I was like, cool, this is a place that we get to go. And I think that sort of, that shines a light on the okay, when something is upsetting or when something feels off or when you don't know what's going on, and say, okay, clearly we're bumping up against something that we may not all agree on. How do we safely go into that space?
Mm.
Can we actually talk about that? I think some of my clients would really benefit from this conversation, and actually myself. Can we talk about like how some practical ways? I mean, we can talk about it conceptually too, but some ways that we can act that you can actually build emotional safety, especially because in situations where like one's idea of safety might be the complete opposite, might feel unsafe for the other person, depending on their experiences. And so, what truly is emotional safety? And then it actually, again, tangent real quick, it makes me think of a concept that I was new to within the last, I don't know, number of years as an adult, we use kind of like safe space, safe space. And one person who I know is doing a presentation on this idea of safety or safe space. And they talked about this radical idea that like you can't, there is no 100% safe space. You can't really, there is no safe space. There could be safer spaces, there could be safe enough spaces or things like that, but there can't truly be 100% safe space, especially if it's in, if it's, what am I trying to say? Sorry, one second. Especially if the expectation is for someone or something outside of ourselves, to cultivate that safety, they might not be able to. So anyway, I know that was a long drawn out question, but
I always talk about safe enough. And I mean, if I can answer that, I feel like that's what we have to do with our clients, right? And I think, and I always talk about front loading, and like if we have to front load and create a safe enough container to answer the question that you're asking. How do we, what needs to happen or what needs to be lacking for this to be emotionally safe?
Yeah, yeah. I think that Melissa has she brought this pointed out to me years ago, and I think that this is what people a lot of times may not recognize or realize within themselves, the energy they bring to a space, which then can alter it and make it the unsafe space just because of them not even being aware of the energy they're bringing into a space. Like I had a client to where their partner asked a question, and they answered, and their partner kind of like responded in a bigger way, so which made them shut down now throughout the relationship. And then it came out years later that, whatever that when they shut down years ago, it came back years later. And because they had never addressed it and they just shut down from it. And that was back. And now it's like, whoa, what do we do now? And how do you backtrack and tell somebody, well, it's because of this that happened when does that make sense what I'm saying?
yeah, I think what I meant
I
by
think it
that,
happens a lot.
like the energy when I said like be aware of the energy that you bring in. I think what I was saying was like beyond your words, right? Beyond the words that you use, are you aware of like what's kind of behind the words,
Body
the
language,
yeah, the body language, the
the
emotion, the emotional
defensiveness.
exactly, the emotional energy that you bring in, the tone, all of this stuff,
Yeah.
like you aware of all of that, which I think it's a skill that takes practice. Like that it takes practice to like what is it? Be attuned emotionally, to people. Like
Yeah. I mean, I
notice.
think this is like the bulk of the work that I do with my clients is helping them create safety, right? This is pretty much what I do because I work predominantly with couples and most couples come in with conflict. So how do we create safety? And it is the number one thing is how can you hold space for your partner when they bring something to you? And that means how do you self regulate? Right? Like if you're coming to a space like you're talking about and your partner says, well, I'm feeling really nervous about sharing this. And you're coming with like, body language that's like slumped over or like eye rolling or like, you know, you're already coming in with a defensiveness, right? That is creating an unsafe space. But if you come into that space with curiosity, like, what is my partner saying? If you come into that space with a curiosity about your partner and a knowledge that what your partner is about to say isn't about you, what your partner is about to say is about their experience. And while you're involved in that, you don't know their experience, and their experience isn't about you, right? Like if you can remove yourself from that and just be curious, like that's really how we
That
create.
sounds amazing and so hard.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say hella
Oh,
scary, like because of the
I
fear
wish
of
I
the
could bottle that up and sell it.
yeah.
Like, it'd be awesome.
It's that anxiety of what action, that they're about to tell me about. Like what have they done or what are they wanting to do, which
Yeah.
brings all kind of anxiety and
Right.
hella like going back to the
In that
fear and
moment,
scary.
how do
Yeah.
you manage that anxiety?
Hmm.
Because if you want to create a safe space, you need to learn how to manage that anxiety. That is exactly what I work with my clients around.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I love it.
That's profound, Mo. If you want to create a safe space, if you want to feel safe or be safe, you also got to be willing to give that safety to like, to contribute to that safety. Um, I just had a moment too now as a therapist or professional or whatever. It's like helping maybe when talking about safety, it would be a good idea to inquire with our clients or ourselves, whatever, like what do they mean like feeling safe, like themselves feeling safe, cultivating a sense of safety within themselves, or safety between two people? Because I think those are different experiences. And to your point, what you just said, like if we're trying to create safety between two people, then yeah, I think a good starting point is like how are we creating safety for our partner, because when you do that, it can come back to you. What do you call it? It benefits you too. Um, versus like I think oftentimes we go and we're like, well, I need to feel safe. How do I feel safe? I need to feel safe. And you go in like, this is how I need to feel safe.
Yeah.
You know?
As opposed to we create it together.
Yes.
We
Hmm.
create safety together. And, sort of piggybacking on that, one thing that I also talk about is if, like if we're doing the initiator inquirer, which we can talk a little bit about that and let the audience know what that is. But if one partner is coming in as the initiator, i.e., they're initiating, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm worried about, this is what I want to talk about, and then the person in the inquirer role is activated, right, and they're defensive and they're not asking questions, but instead they're defending themselves or they're explaining, and they're not creating safety. The other thing I often remind them is that person in that role has the hardest role. The hardest role is to listen and create safety. We went to graduate school for years to learn that. We learned how to become really good listeners, that and how to regulate ourselves. Like we kind of learned how. I mean, like we learned in theory how. We had to practice it and get 3,000 hours to really learn how to do it,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
in that process, um we went to school for it. So what we're asking our couples to do, we went to school to do,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? But literally that's what partners need, is to build safety, is to be able to hold that space, similar to the way a therapist does. And it is the hardest job. So
Be
letting
hard.
our clients know how hard that job is
Yeah.
can provide them some like encouragement and validity, like it's going to be a road.
Yeah. We're training you how to be a listener while not being reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they actually get the ultimate training because as a therapist, yeah, we went through so much training for that, but there's an advantage that we have in that we're not emotionally involved and connected to the situation.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the privilege and the advantage that we hold. and we get to hold because we get to be fully present and helpful to you because we're not emotionally we
Totally.
get to listen in that way because we're but when we are emotionally involved, when it's our own shit, that's a whole nother
Yeah.
experience, you know. And so that's why I get so excited about couples work, and when I'm like, let me teach you this tool, because if you get this like
Yeah.
for yourself, it's great.
Yeah, I was a little bit shameful one time to tell one of my therapists what I was going through. I was like, "Oh, you're going to think I'm a terrible therapist 'cause I'm going through this." And she said, I'll never forget it. She's like, "Kelly, if every mental health professional had to completely have their shit together, there would be no mental health professionals." I was
Mhm.
like, "You know what? Yeah, you're right."
And what better person to do the work is someone that has gone through it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so to have gone through it and to be working on yourself, you are the best person to also be doing the work.
Yeah.
So that
Exactly.
means everybody could be doing this work, right? It doesn't, it's not rocket science, but it does take work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, even this conversation we're having today feels like therapy to me. Like I right now feel like this is one of my favorite conversations we've had. Like I feel like I've had several like moments of just little epiphanies and moments of being open and like, oh, this makes sense. And I don't know. That's
Same.
just
I actually, okay, Loki, I was over here thinking like, oh my gosh, we should do a role play for them. We should just we should like really show them, what can be done and something. Because yeah, same. I was just this is it. This is what it can feel like. I think that's a good point. Okay. It could be so helpful to have somebody help you, guide you through what safety can feel like. Because I know we get into this like checklist of, okay, I need this, it needs to be this or whatever, rather than just like, what does it feel like experientially? Because
Embodied.
when you know what it feels like experientially, that can be your compass in situations, it's like, oh yes, this is what it feels like to feel safe, and I want more of that or less of that or whatever. And again, we are not so tied to these like very rigid ideas of I need this for safety and it must look like this, which often is really about the other person and kind of controlling things and what you want them to do or not do versus, your own personal boundaries.
well, that's codependency at its finest, right? But that's being this idea, if you're worried about how they're going to respond, but this idea of like, oh, we can, what did you say? What did you say at the beginning of that? I can't remember exactly, but I was thinking that's what you're
Mhm.
talking about, Melissa, is exactly why I work somatically. Because I'm like, hey, things are really you don't still seem okay right now. You seem very dysregulated. What's happening for you right now? Or the opposite of you two seem really in rhythm together and you seem really connected. What's happening for you right now? And so you're right, Melissa. It's like how do we have people connect to what's actually happening for them and the experiential part of it? And I
Mhm.
think that's the
I,
somatic piece.
I think that's why the somatic and the embodied work is so important, especially when we are talking about dysregulation. Like
Yeah.
they need to know what that feels like. They're
Yeah.
experiencing it, but when it's showing up in conflict or in discussions or in their relationships, how are they going to manage it if they don't know what it feels like, right? Like just the concepts that we use in talk therapy are not enough,
Well,
right?
I don't think the deficit is in feeling it. I think people feel it all the time. I think the deficit is in being able to name it, have
Yeah.
awareness around it, and figure out what to do with it. I mean,
Yeah.
we feel that from a child that hasn't had their diaper changed that's screaming. Like we understand what it feels like, but to actually, it's like we were saying earlier, we're the main character in our own movie. But to be able to recognize that, name it, have the self awareness around it, and have agency over it as opposed to it driving us.
Right.
Yeah.
To be able to stay in or not stay in it, but stay with, say, a conversation or a hard conversation or whatever.
Well, yeah, have perspective while still experiencing it.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think conversations like these, when people listen to it, they get to be like, "Oh, wow, that's what that means. So that's what that is. Oh, I know that. And I didn't know that was I know that I didn't know the word, or I did, like you said, naming it. Like, oh, and now they can now we're giving them information or tools to where they can name the thing and that what they're feeling and going through. Like you were talking about, what are they feeling in their body? It was, oh, Kelly, talking about somatic work. Like they're starting to hear things like, oh, and be able to relate them to themselves. Like, oh yeah, I know that. I experienced that. I know that. I remember when I realized that. It's like, damn, Melissa had dealt with anxiety at one point early on in our relationship in a different way, and so I was like, man, I don't think and then she had pointed out to me one day, I was like, oh man, I have anxiety when I drive. Sometimes I wake up in the morning, like, man, this anxiety is everywhere. Like I remember it was just like crazy. This is like what, like 18 years ago when I realized, like, oh my God, I have anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's good to have shared vocabulary around things where you
Mm.
realize this is what I mean when I say it, this is what my partner means when they say it, and this is what my therapist understands. And so to have shared vocabulary is great.
We got to have part two of this because if Callie didn't have to go, I would have so volunteered myself to like, yeah, kind of go through, creating safety given some of my recent experiences because I think this is really helpful. But
We can do that next time.
yeah,
I know, but it always, the somatic experiences
right.
in it feels like we can go into it, but it'll be our somatic experience is going to be we're cutting it off and we're going
Right.
to expected to turn it right back on next time. And that's not how we work. And so
Okay.
I think just that in and of itself is an experiential thing. Like we're cutting it off and we're going to try to bring it back up. And we've got to figure out how to make that cohesive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm
Oh,
geeking out. I'm
I
geeking out
know. Me
so
too.
hard
Yeah,
today.
me too.
Yeah, this is the most Melissa has I think has been active in a
It's good.
I think it's the least active Mo has been.
And
What?
myself.
You started out talking a lot at the beginning, and then you kind of removed yourself. I feel like Melissa and I were like,
We found y'all lane.
huh? Like this is my favorite one so far. Like I totally geeked out.
Yeah, because it started. I started going off into a tangent when you said that, Kelly, about like we're cutting this off and we got to learn how to like. That went took me into the whole like sex therapy route, of like how we can use that tool in intimacy and sex and sexuality and things
Yeah,
like that.
and it really made me
Matrix.
most. Oh, sorry, did I interrupt you?
Okay, that was it.
But Mo and I were on a call with someone else a few weeks ago, and I was put on the spot a tiny bit. I don't remember exactly what the question was. I was like, I don't know, what kind of therapist am I? Which you would think would be a really easy question to answer, and I've kind of bumbled through it. And then Mo was like, I think you're like relational. That's where you shine, right? And I think that's why I geeked out on today because we're talking about like how do we deal with this in a relationship? What does this look like in relationship? And so that's why I'm thinking, oh, right now we're really hardcore in relationship together and we've got to stop it. And we're going to pick it up later and want to jump right back in. And we got to figure out the safety in that. We've got to figure out that piece of it.
Exactly.
And that's that is the sort of the downfall of the 50-minute method, right? And one
Yes.
of the things that I do at the end of sessions is that co-regulation so that the couple knows how to co-regulate, right?
Yeah.
And you can do it at the beginning. Session 2 is helping people land when they first arrive and land into this space, into their bodies, and use those embodied pieces.
Yeah.
And because it is hard to like transition, transitions are hard.
Yes.
We've talked about that in different scenarios. So like this whole concept of the 50-minute therapy hour
Yes.
is
No,
like
you just like presented 4 doors that I want to geek out on.
Yeah.
that's what I do. I present the macro and then you all dive in.
We're like,
All right. I love you all very much. I got to go.
bye, Kelly.
Bye, Kelly.
Thank you for listening.
Shades of Pleasure podcast is currently unsponsored and is brought to you by Los Angeles Sex Therapy and Last Collective in partnership with Shades Therapy and Shades of Non-Monogamy. To support our endeavor so we can continue to bring this pleasurable content, please visit our Substack at shadesofpleasure.substack.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time.